Hi, I'm Carrie Cassidy from Project Camelot, and we're here with Bill Ryan and also Klaus Dauna. And Klaus is a maverick archaeologist investigating the mysterious past that the powers that be don't want you to know about of humanity. And we are very happy to be here today in Vienna. And Klaus, tell us something about your beginnings and how you got into this amazing
in a good condition or used by themselves or many excuses. So everybody told me it's better you give up this project because it's impossible to get these artifacts. And as I never give up so easy, we started then 1.5 years before the planned schedule of the exhibition, researching by ourselves. We went to South America, to Mexico, to United States, We researched on internet, contacted East Asia and many countries in the world, and collectors and museums, other museums, and finally on the day of opening on 21st of June 2001, we could show in Vienna 470 strange artifacts.
That sounds, Klaus, that must have been a really interesting personal journey for you, because if I understand you right, in the period of about a year and a half, your learning curve about these objects and what they meant must have been almost vertical as you encountered more and more information and talked to more and more people.
I would say it was hell. It was really tough.
But it sounds like it's fascinating. Why was it so hard?
Because first of all you have to find those artifacts, then you have to talk with the owners, with the museums, you have to build up trust level, you have to show that you are really serious, that you are able to do such an exhibition, and that's thanks of my experience in culture exhibitions. I could prove that I was handling like original paintings of Rubens, millions of dollars worth, so I could prove that I can handle very valuable artifacts, and finally we could really get 470, and I did not expect that all those artifacts, we had some scientists helping us, checking if those artifacts are original, and we never found they never found out that there is some new made artifact with it. So I changed from skeptic to really big surprised, and it was like once you go into this world and you find out that there are so many so interesting artifacts all over the world, you want to know more and more and more, and since those years I'm still researching, I'm still traveling, and the money I earn with my culture exhibitions I spend for the research and for the over the Atlantic and passes in the Atlantic a big island. So, if you know the story about Atlantis, there are many stories where Atlantis should have been, but one of the places even Edgar Cayce was telling about was close to United States in the Atlantic. There was a big island, Atlantis. On this world stone map, you have this continent. Then the line goes over Brazil to Ecuador, where today is Guayaquil, the Bay of Guayaquil, and continues over the Pacific back to this eye. But from the area of the Bay of Guayaquil, you have another inlay up to the north, and then a small round inlay. And exactly this is today's location where these artifacts were found. There is, for example, one of the most interesting artifacts is the pyramid with the shining eye, which is very famous in many, many stories, in Hollywood movies and so on. It is exactly the same pyramid like on your United States $1 note on the back side. It has 13 steps and it has a gray eye. But if you put this pyramid under black light, this eye shines, and for me it looks like the star fog, which they found out with, the NASA found out, and they called this star fog the eye of God. And this eye under black light really looks quite similar. So it is a really shining eye, but only if you use black light. So now every scientist would say several hundred or thousand years ago they did not have ultraviolet or black light. Could be, could not be. There is also the story about the light in Egypt, that they used already electrical light, but they found batteries in Baghdad which are older than 3,000 years and they still give electricity. But another explanation I got in South America from some shamans, it could be if a very good shaman is taking some ayahuasca or some natural drugs, that this could change the view of eyes. And they explained me it could be like if you use LSD. I have no experience, but using LSD also people can see very special light effects with their eye. So there are several explanations. Other very important pieces from the same place in Ecuador is a stone cup, a big stone cup, and 12 little stone cups. The stone cups, the little stone cups, are all a little different size because they are handmade. So, but if you fill them completely up with water and you put the 12 small cups in and Grecia and some countries. I mean, it's very strange.
So the ruins at Yonaguni, they were brought to the attention of English-speaking people by Graham Hancock.
Yes.
Is this someone whose work you follow, and are you in touch with him personally?
Graham Hancock visited Professor Kimura, and Professor Kimura took him down to Yonaguni, to Iseki Island, and he was diving with Graham Hancock. He showed him part of it, because in the meantime, Professor Kimura found out many other things. Especially for me, one of the most interesting is a stadium with stairs and with seating rows, like an Italian, like a Roman Colosseum, but under the sea level. And Professor Kimura still in our days has problems with some Japanese and international colleagues, because they are saying that this big monument under the sea level is natural made, but I do not think that nature is so great that nature is doing even a stadium like a Colosseum. And another one, I think, is if one is really researching and finding out unbelievable and should not be results, that many of the other colleagues would immediately attack him openly through television, through newspapers, magazines, etc. I think there are examples like an American lady, Virginia Steen McIntyre. You know the story about her,
and sorry, but our viewers probably don't.
And there is also there was a young German scientist, a lady. She found out, first of all, she found in textile of Egyptian mummies coca and tobacco particles.
Which come from South America.
Which only,
yes.
Especially cocaine, the coca plant only
It's a lack of intellectual courage, isn't it, to some degree? Would you?
Yeah, but I understand those people. If I have a family and a good job, why should I risk it to take up such problems?
Yep.
What about Michael Cremo? Isn't this the forbidden archaeology? Is he somebody that you know?
I know him, Michael Cremo. I invited him for the opening of our exhibition 2001 in Vienna. Michael came here, and we did a so-called Unsolved Mysteries conference, and he hold a speech here, but the press did not really report about it. And I mean, for us, it was a great chance that this man came over and talked about his findings. But for him, it was also very interesting because he could see personally some of the artifacts which he was writing in his books in original in our exhibition. So it was, for both of us, it was a good thing.
Okay, but wouldn't you say that there's also some kind of effort on the part of the powers that be to keep this information from the public? So it's more than just individual scientists being afraid for their reputation.
If only one of those very strange artifacts are accepted as original, our history would be a little bit different until our days, and I think it is different.
Well, haven't you discovered, though, some things that are actually, I mean, not only the map that in the stone that you're talking about, but giants, evidence of giants here on the planet?
Yes. You have the stories of giants in any country, in any continent of this world. Even in Africa, the Kalahari people, they have stories about giants. I mean, are those stories all over the world just legends? And I was invited several years ago by Wayne Deloria. He unfortunately passed away a few years ago. He got contact with me through the exhibition catalog in Vienna, and he invited me to a meeting in the United States with 15 elders of the big tribes. And at this time, I did not know anything, and I had no information about giants or little people. But the strange thing is that the story, this 3 days meeting with the elders, were the stories about giants and little people. They talked about what their legends or what their history, what their ancestors told them and so on about giants and little people. And when everybody has to believe that giants really lived. But I have other informations, for example, from Bolivia, about 2.6, 2.8 meter giants with long skulls, and I already received some photos, which I will give you. The strange thing is that the skull is like an egg, like a real egg. There is you cannot see that it is deformed.
Yes.
There is nothing which looks for deformation. And the most strange thing is that on the top of the skull, we have 3 bone plates with the center, the so-called fontanella, which closes when we get adult. On this top of the skulls, there is no bone plate connection. That means definitely it cannot be a Homo sapiens sapiens.
So, have you had these tested? You know, Lloyd Pye, we talked to him just the other day, and he has a skull from what he calls a star child. And I don't know if you've seen this skull, but
Yes.
he's trying to raise money to get it tested.
Yes.
And I'm wondering, did you have any of the bones that you've discovered tested this special way?
Giant bones from Ecuador. I have a friend who is the only archaeological DNA specialist in Austria, and he checked these bones, but he could not find any DNA, and he said up to 10,000 years there might be a chance to find DNA, but if bones are older than 10,000 years, you can forget, you cannot find any DNA anymore. And the good thing is that in this area where the bones were found, the earth is very hard, and so the water cannot go through the earth in this area. That means that the bones could stay there for, let's say, even more than 10,000 years. And the strange thing is, where those bones were found, the area is called in the Aymara language the cemetery of the giants.
Let me first ask you a scientific question. It's not intended to be skeptical, but it's a genuine question which I have, which is now, if we convert this to feet for our American friends watching this video, you're talking about giants that are 15 to 25 feet tall.
That's right.
Now, my understanding of such a large human being is that there would be problems with the skeletal structure, the weight that it would have to have, the volume to surface ratio. If you think about a large animal like an elephant or a rhinoceros, they move slowly, their legs are very thick. The thing would look differently than a human being who's just 2 meters or 6 feet high. Is there evidence that for instance, that the leg bones, the femur, is especially strong? Because these things must weigh an enormous amount. Do they actually look like people, but scaled up?
That's what I cannot answer as long as we do not really find one complete.
Okay.
But on the other hand, there are two possibilities. Either the gravity of the Earth was different.
Mm-hmm. Or they come from a planet where the gravity of the Earth was different.
That could be the next possibility, but then there is a third one. Because in writings, in documentations from 1573, Chiesa de Leon, a very famous Spanish, half Inca historian of the conquistadores in South America,
yes,
there is his writing, which says, at the coast of Esmeraldas in Ecuador, we found several skeletons, human skeletons, but they were all 5 to 6 times taller than we are. And as those skeletons only could be from devil, they destroyed them.
Okay. Yeah.
I don't understand. They could only be from what?
From the devil.
The devil.
From the devil. They really found skeletons 5 to 6 times taller, and around this age, the normal men were about 150 all of these researches are quite expensive, and I cannot make, on the one hand, the researches abroad to find those pieces, to make the travels, to collect the pieces for an exhibition, to do the exhibition. On the other hand, each piece to check through scientists. I mean, this would cost really a lot of money.
Okay, and I mean, well, I would like to ask you about that. How do you finance what you do? Because it's obviously very expensive to do these explorations.
I'm using the money I earn with my real work, I mean with my culture exhibitions, I use to spend for the other side.
Okay, well, this is very admirable that you do this. You really have to be so passionate in order to pursue this. I mean, you must be just busy all the time.
But isn't the same time, is that the same to you?
Yes.
What
absolutely.
you are doing?
Yes.
Well,
I mean, it's not easy what we are doing.
What
No,
we're doing
it's
is
amazing.
what we're doing is pretty much a full-time hobby, and you have a part-time hobby. It's a wonderful hobby to have, and it involves going places that some other people don't necessarily.
Way, there is a second professor, an Italian professor, who is now able also to translate it, and they found in Calabria over 300 artifacts made out of stone and ceramic and terracotta, and there was one big plate, and he translated this plate, and the translation was talking about a small stone circle like Stonehenge, but smaller, of course, It was writing about a mastodont, and it was writing that in this area also are the graves, underground graves of the Sea Kings. And a friend of mine, Adriano Forgione.
This was his translation.
That was his translation,
writing.
yes. Right. And the area, the translation where can be find this area, and because of this translation, my friend Adriano Forgione found the small stone circle, he found the mastodon statue, and he found with ground penetrate radar that there is underground a huge tunnel system.
So it was a correct translation?
So that means you cannot translate something and then you find exactly what the translation says if it is not correct.
How
so
is some... sorry, continue please.
So this also, and he was able to translate it because he took over part of the information from Professor Schildmann. So that means that also the translation of Professor Schildmann was correct, but nobody yet accepted it. You cannot translate something and then you find exactly what the translation says if it is not correct. And he
was described by Plato?
could be and maybe is so because I think there is a talking about Mu, the continent Mu in the Pacific, which also Professor Kimura now is saying that there existed a long continent and he calls this continent Mu. I think that from Pacific region people moved through China to India because Churchward, who read the book The Lost Continent Mu,
James Churchward.
James Churchward, yes, he was talking about the Nakal plates he found in a temple in India, and the translation was talking about the sinking of the continent Mu. And then he got the informations from William Niven, a geologist from United States making discoveries in Mexico. He found in the Valley of Mexico thousands of artifacts, and there were also plates with the same symbols like Churchward saw in India. That means for me that maybe part of people from a sinking, for example, sinking continent, were moving through China to India and later on to Egypt, and another part came from South America via Africa to the north to Egypt. that could be the explanation why in mummies, in textiles of mummies, they could find coca and tobacco. And another view is that at the coast of West Africa they found some sunken cities also, and they found a statue, a half-portrait statue in Granite Mountain, with a lady which is not looking, the face is not black African looking, either South American or Asian, and this statue from the head until this area is about 150 meters in granite. How could they have done such a huge monument in a mountain?
That's enormous.
This is definitely enormous. And I think that could be one explanation why some mummies are laid in the grave facing the west in Egypt, and some of the mummies are facing the east. That could be another explanation, that some of those of this civilization came from east and the other one came from north.
But are you saying? I mean,
From
you say this map
Yes.
had both Mu and Atlantis on it.
And the third continent also in the Pacific, around the area where today the Fiji Islands and Easter Islands is. Three continents which are not existing or not the same style.
But
like
they were
today.
all simultaneously on this map.
They were
so
they are on this map.
okay, but my understanding was that Mu preceded Atlantis. Is this perhaps wrong, or this
Could
is?
Could be, but
We don't know.
I mean, there are so many different stories about it,
Yeah.
so nobody really knows the right answer yet. And concerning the William Niven plates, friends of mine in Mexico are now researching. Hopefully we can find some of them. And another friend of mine, a German researcher, found, and he could see already the Nakal plates in India, which nobody yet could see or make a photo about it. So that means that those plates exist, and I am wondering if this has a connection again to this unknown writing, because on a stone plate which was found in Yonaguni, there are also some symbols, and they are definitely similar with and they made a measurement and everything, and they said there is no doubt this was definitely a human giant stepping inside the cement.
Okay,
And
but
it's not
isn't
stone. And this is very interesting. So that this is very interesting. So that
I thought
means that
cement was not even created until relatively recently.
there is interesting information that they found in one stone block of the Great Pyramid in Egypt a human hair coming out from the stone. So that means, could it be that this is not stone, that this also was cement, or is it really stone? I mean, I'm not a geologist and I have no chance to check it, but it would be interesting, how comes a human hair into a stone?
I have a question now about these two artifacts which you have here. I know that most of them are in secure storage at the moment, so we're not able to lay them all out on the table. But on your desk right here, you've got a couple of objects. Described as the metal library, is that right?
Could be that those pieces are from this metal library. They were not accepted by official Patrimonio Cultural, that means the ministry. They did check on all the pieces of Father Carlos Vaca, and as those two pieces have nothing to do with the pre-Columbian culture, they were not accepted as original. The strange thing is that a few months ago in Bolivia, they found out some translations of writings on stone monuments in Bolivia, and they found out that this writing is connected or is Sumerian writing. And if we are talking now about Sumerian writing or Phoenician writings found in South America, we have here one plate which usually, from our view, from the scientific view, has nothing to do with South America.
Could you hold it up for the camera just so
Yes, sure.
so we can
You
see
have
it.
here
That's what we're looking at.
half human with a bird and wings, bird head and wings, and here is the tree of life. The same found in Babylonia. This is, I hopefully, and I think we checked it already, is an original, but there is one, the same statue, the same form in the British Museum, made out of stone, but much taller, and found in Babylonia.
But it doesn't look like a bird. It looks like a reptilian to me. A reptile.
Yeah, but has wings.
It has wings,
Yeah.
so that's why you call it a bird.
Yeah.
Okay, for what we understand is that there is a version of the reptilian that has wings, but that's, you know, not proven, of course.
But interesting is that Sumerian writings on very, very old statues in South America. Again, the question is, if those monuments can be proved that they are much older than 3, 4, 5,000 years, then that means it could be that the writing came from there to Near East or Middle East.
Now there's writing on this particular
Yes.
plate.
Also this that we have to do when we can finance it. But another thing is, on the back side, it shows, and this is very unusual for anybody, it looks like it was broken, and on the front side you can only see one line where it was broken, but how did they remove the other broken line, and why
Yes, exactly.
did they repair it in this way? I mean, there is not a real explanation for it.
What we're looking at here is the raised line of a weld, just as you would have in a machine shop if you wanted to weld a little piece of your car here in Vienna. That's interesting.
Yeah.
But it doesn't, it's so well done that it barely shows in the front. That's also very significant, I would
here,
think.
a friend of mine, a very great geologist, checked this. He said it's a perfect masterwork, first of all, and it was gold-plated in the past.
So it used to be gold-plated, but the gold has been taken off.
Yes.
So that implies in itself that it's very old. This isn't the kind of thing
But-
that we've done recently.
But it also doesn't look scratched. Like, how did they remove the gold without scratching it? Because it's still beautiful, really.
Yes.
It has an amazing integrity about, and the artwork is just amazing.
And you're going to go on an expedition fairly soon, is
Yes.
that right? Is
Yes.
it something you can talk about on record?
Yes, we have informations that they found skeletons. We have from the Bolivian military, we got some informations that they found skeletons, I talked before, in the size of 2.6, 2.8 meters with the long skulls. And then we will definitely ask the government if we might be allowed to bring one skeleton to Europe, to Vienna, and hopefully we get the cooperation of the university that we can make all the checkings necessary on it.
Well, that would be quite spectacular to have a skeleton like that. Something which I would like to say on record here, I'm sure you know about this, is that circulating around the internet there are photographs of apparent archaeological excavations of these big skulls, but these are all Photoshop hoaxes, aren't they?
Most of them, I would say until now there is not a real original photograph on the internet. I mean, I found out very quickly, I got this information when I saw the first skeleton. It was written, they found it in India, then later on they found a similar one in China and all this. I knew exactly that this is a fake.
Yes. In fact, they're not fakes. It would be unkind to call them fakes.
They are professional computer graphic design work.
They were actually
Perfect done.
there were entries in a Photoshop competition.
Yes.
Is what they were.
Yes.
So no one's trying to
Right.
hoax. But the
Right.
problem is they're so good that people then think it's real, and the kids pick them up on YouTube and they go around saying, look,
That's
there's an
right.
Nephilim, and actually this isn't real evidence. Right?
That's right.
Many people who've been following our own work would be wanting us to ask you the question about Zecharia Sitchin's research into Sumerian ancient texts and his conclusions about the Anunnaki. Do you have any personal view, or have you encountered any evidence from your own work about the Anunnaki? Or is this connected with the giants that you've been talking about? Or do you not feel able to comment on this?
I read the books from Mr. Sitchin. Very interesting stories. I have not yet approval that it really connects to the Anunnaki, but as I told you before, the finding of the Sumerian writing in Bolivia is talking on to some of the explanations of Mr. Sitchin, and hopefully with more informations on my next Bolivian trip, maybe I can even find more and more, and the next step is
10 years' time, let's not let 2012 get in the way. When much more is being uncovered, much more is being revealed, many more young alternative archaeologists are coming forward and doing good work. What do you think is still there, waiting to be discovered? What do you think the picture might look like that we might find the evidence to assemble?
I think there are still many things underground, but the strange thing is, since the last few years, more and more artifacts are coming up. That means the finding of such artifacts is tremendous increasing, and if we talk about the amount concerning Bolivian archaeologists, only 10% of the archaeological sites in Bolivia are researched. That means not only Bolivia, Ecuador, the jungle, Brazil, there are so many places all over the world, Africa, which are not discovered yet archaeological wise. There's too much still underground, and I hope we find point by point more pieces, more puzzles to finalize a wonderful picture. And that the Earth was completely different than we are talking or we are knowing or we get taught by schools and scientists.
What you do with your investigations is a lot to do with what you are able to do on a human level. In other words, making friends, influencing people, getting sort of inroads, finding this one leads to that one, sort of almost a magic that goes on between you and the people you meet. Isn't that right?
Sometimes it's very answers on certain questions.
I completely understand and agree. This is how we like to operate as well. But just now, I can't let you get away with this because you mentioned the word 2012 for the first time. I didn't know that this was going to come up. Is there any kind of a connection between what we may be about to experience and what the ancient people experienced, as is evidenced in the artifacts that you've examined?
I got some information from some shamans, some elders, and especially also from David Wood, who is a Mexican man, and I think he is worldwide the best man talking about the Mayan and Aztec calendar, and he can, concerning the Maya Aztec calendar, he can tell about the future, and he gave me some informations.
Can you summarize that? Or would you prefer not to?
If somebody would give this information, I think it should be David Wood himself. And he is really the expert on Maya and Aztec calendar.
Okay, but you've also met some of the elders. In other words, you must have met the Mayan elders, and perhaps have you talked to the Hopis at all?
Hopi not, other tribe elders, and in Mexico yes, in Peru yes, in Ecuador, in Colombia,
Well, this is amazing. So have they given you any information?
I got some information, yes.
Okay. And did they tell you anything about 2012 in their view?
We have two possibilities,
Okay.
a good one and a bad one.
I see.
And that's why we still have time, 3 years, to work on up to this date.
Okay. So they have led you to believe that the future is not fixed.
No, there is always a possibility, a chance.
Okay. And is 2012 perhaps influencing you to do some of the work that you do?
No, I hope I can do it longer than up to 2012,
Okay.
because it's very interesting.
Yes. No doubt about it. So tell us a little bit more about some of the discoveries that you've made that are actually possibly have the potential to change history as we know it.
Change history is quite difficult, I say. Oh yeah, you mean
Our view of
the
history.
view of history, yes. For example, a very interesting collection also in Bogota, in Colombia, Professor Gutierrez. He is the most famous industrial designer and architect in Colombia, and he has a collection of very strange artifacts, all found in Colombia. For example, there are small tiles made out of a stone which is called ludite, which is very hard. It's about nearly the same hardness like granite, but the structure of this stone is like leaves, so that checked those pieces afterwards when we got the result that it is definitely stone ludite, and he checked those pieces for several hours, and finally he said, I do not know how they made it, I do not know who made it, and I cannot say when they made it, but the only thing what I can say, those artifacts from the same material in our days we are not able to do. So that means where those artifacts came from we don't know. And again, those pieces are not accepted by the Colombian archaeologists or scientists. I'm happy about that, because if they would say those are archaeological originals, I would not have been able to show them in my exhibitions. So as they are not original, I can show them. But for me, they are original, and for anybody else, because if we are not able to do the same artifacts, even with our high tech today, who could have made them? They are original, but from which civilization we don't know.
Okay, but I don't understand when you say if they were accepted by the Colombian archaeologists.
As
then-
original, archaeological pieces.
Right. Then they
I
wouldn't
would
let
not-
you have.
No, I would not have had the chance
I
to
see.
bring them out.
Because why? They would keep hold of them because of.
No, they are very strict with lending archaeological artifacts, historical artifacts.
I see.
They are very, very strict.
You
in
couldn't take
Colombia.
them across
I
borders,
would not
etc.
have been able to bring
Huh.
them abroad.
I see. Very interesting. You know a lot about the crystal skulls as well. I mean, this is the reason we began to speak with you, because you
Yes.
told us some things about actually the Mitchell Hedges crystal skull that were very controversial, and I'd love to hear you talk about that a little bit. So, can you talk about why you feel that the Mitchell Hedges skull is not actually as old as we thought it was?
In the year 1983 or 84, Mrs. Mitchell Hedges came to Vienna with her crystal skull because she got the information, I think, from Getty's Museum, that the worldwide #1 expert on crystal work is in Vienna. And she visited Dr. Distelberger, he's a friend of mine. He visited him and he checked this skull for several hours, and he said he thinks that this skull is from end of 19th century, and he thinks that it's done in Ober-Iderstein in Germany. He did not say it's guaranteed, but as far as I know him for many years, when he says he thinks, it looks like. He was laughing when I showed him the report from Hewlett-Packard Institution that they checked several crystal skulls, and especially the Mitchell Hedges skull, because their report was that the amazing and incredible thing what they did in making this crystal skull, which is usually impossible, is that they made the skull against the crystal structure. And when he read this, he was loud laughing, and he said, "This is the most stupid thing I ever heard," because in his collection, not in his collection, in the historical museum, in the Historical Art Museum in Vienna, he was in charge for the treasure room, and in this collection there are vases and forms made in the 16th, 17th century in Italy, big crystal vases, but made out of real mountain crystal, and he said how they could have done such great works if they would not have worked against the crystal formation. I mean, I appreciate the work, the high-tech of Hewlett-Packard. I appreciate it. I love the computer technique of Hewlett-Packard, the printers, but I think to check a real old crystal skull is different to check high-tech small pieces or whatever, and I do not think that they are really experts on checking if those crystal skulls are original or not.
Okay, this is very interesting. So if it was created in the 19th century,
That's what he which were telling him that this was done by quartz sand. And then he said, and then I think they used leather for polishing, but in totally it must have taken a very long time. And then he said, of course I cannot say how old this crystal skull is, but this crystal skull must have laid long time underground, under the earth, because there is here in this part a kind of corrosion which needs at least minimum 500 years to get this. So that means the minimum age of this ET skull is over 500 years, could be much older of course, but it is handmade and it is older than 500 years, so that means it is a definitely guarantee that this ET is an old Mayan crystal skull.
Fascinating. So the Mitchell Hedges skull, when he said it was it may be the 19th century.
He said I could see some wheel forms, which means when he's talking about wheel, he's talking about an automatic instrument.
I see.
Yeah.
Now, is it possible, and I'm just throwing this out, but obviously we're talking about giants that walk the earth. We're talking about technology that they may have had in Atlantis and Mu. Is it possible that these wheels could have been a long, long time ago wheels?
That also could be, but he is a real expert, and he said the form of work, the style of work, shows him more to end of 19th century Ida Oberstein.
I see. Fascinating.
And this village, even today, has the best precious stone workers in the world.
It's important, I think, just to say that even if that is true, it's the most wonderful work of art. It's a spectacular.
Definitely, that's what he said. It's a wonderful done work, a wonderful one.
And it may even have remarkable qualities, because crystals often do, but we're just talking about the age of this artifact.
When it was done, and if it is really like, there are so many stories, it was brought by aliens, and it was so many stories. I mean, where is the guarantee? I would never say something or point out something if I cannot get a guarantee.
I understand.
I could tell you a lot of stories, very interesting stories, but finally I would not have an approval if this is true or not. So
I understand. Just as we were saying off camera, in your work you have to proceed cautiously and carefully, because not everything is obvious at all in the field which you're researching, right?
yes.
But
I have already enough enemies. I don't need more.
But isn't it also true that you have to be, you have to have an open mind constantly for whatever you're doing, because you're never able to really come to any particular conclusions thus far, it sounds like.
That's what I said. I need much, much more time, even longer than 2012, to continue this work, and maybe one day we can present a really nice picture, even if it's not completely yet, but it might show many, many things.
Okay, now I would like to know, just on a personal level, how it is that this person, such as yourself, who is an expert at art, right, got into this archaeology and yet stayed very concentrating in this area to this date. I mean, you're actually working against all odds. What is it that drives you on?
First of all, as I was skeptical, I changed completely my mind.
Okay.
Of course, I found out many fakes and frauds also. That's why I always check the pieces personally. I want to see the pieces, not only asking people to lend me for the exhibition. First of all, I want to see them and get my own feeling. And second of all, before the exhibition, I was always telling my friends, leave me alone with the esoteric persons, because they are all flying in the sky. And Through this work, I had so many very strange and sometimes very fantastic experiences that I, even in this field, had to change my mind.
So, in a sense, you're on a journey of consciousness, not just of material archaeology, but you're actually almost experiencing your own change of consciousness as a result of what you're coming across. And this
That's
is,
right.
this is maybe leading you on.
Yes.
Fascinating. Really, really quite interesting.
And through this work, I met so many, so interesting persons, and hopefully it goes on.
So you are also on the trail of a mystery, such as we are. And I think perhaps, is it the mystery also that drives you because you want to know more
That's right.
and find the answers?
That's right.
Okay, and lastly, I would like to ask you whether there's a way we can help ask people to contribute to your work.
That would be great. I'm happy for any information where there are some strange artifacts, or where they found some pieces which they cannot put them into any civilization or so on. For any information I would be very happy, because that continues to put the network bigger and bigger.
And do you have any patrons, people who donate to your cause to make it financially possible?
Until now, only one friend who really helps me, but I will need many more.
Okay, and lastly, do you think that there are people out there, whether it's the Illuminati or whatever, because here we are in Vienna, in Austria, certainly the heartland of the Illuminati, if you will. Do you think there are people out there preventing you or attempting to prevent you from doing your work?
That I'm quite sure.
Have you had any specific
I
incidents?
had specific incidents concerning financing. I had the offer to finance an exhibition through a foundation, and I started and I did everything, and finally they did never pay, and they left me over with a huge amount open. But and I think that was really planned to push me out of this work, to show these artifacts, but I never give up.
Oh, fabulous.
And I said, if somebody declares me the war, I have to fight.
Okay, so if you have obstacles in your path, that actually spurs you on.
Yes.
That's your kind of personality.
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. Okay.
I'm a peaceful man, but if somebody really hits me, I start fighting. And the more I work now on this field, and the more I will show in the future, hopefully.
Okay,
to the
well,
people.
we wish you the very best in your path, and
Thank you.
we are happy to learn more and to even follow you around the world with cameras if need be.
Please. You will be surprised, I'm sure.
Okay, wonderful finish.
Over the Atlantic and passes in the Atlantic a big island. So, if you know the story about Atlantis, there are many stories where Atlantis should have been, but one of the places even Edgar Cayce was telling about was close to United States in the Atlantic. There was a big island, Atlantis. On this world stone map you have this continent. Then the line goes over Brazil to Ecuador, where today is Guayaquil, the Bay of Guayaquil and continues over the Pacific back to this eye. But from the area of the Bay of Guayaquil, you have another inlay up to the north and then a small round inlay. And exactly this is today's location where these artifacts were found. There is, for example, one of the most interesting artifacts is the pyramid with the shining eye, which is very famous in many, many stories, in Hollywood movies and so on. It is exactly the same pyramid like on your United States $1 note on the back side. It has 13 steps and it has a gray eye. But if you put this pyramid under black light, this eye shines, and for me it looks like the star fog which they found out with, the NASA found out, and they called this star fog the eye of God. And this eye under black light really looks quite similar. So it is a really shining eye, but only if you use black light. So now every scientist would say several hundred or thousand years ago they did not have ultraviolet or black light. Could be, could not be. There is also the story about the light in Egypt, that they used already electrical light, but they found batteries in Baghdad which are older than 3,000 years and they still give electricity. But another explanation I got in South America from some shamans, it could be if a very good shaman is taking some ayahuasca or some natural drugs, that this could change the view of eyes, and they explained me it could be like if you in a good condition or used by themselves or many excuses. So everybody told me it's better you give up this project because it's impossible to get these artifacts. And as I never give up so easy, we started then 1.5 years before the planned schedule of the exhibition, researching by ourselves. We went to South America, to Mexico, to United States. We researched on internet, contacted East Asia and many countries in the world, and collectors and museums, other museums, and finally on the day of opening on 21st of June 2001, we could show in Vienna 470 strange artifacts.
That sounds, Klaus, that must have been a really interesting personal journey for you, because if I understand you right, in the period of about 1.5 years, your learning curve about these objects and what they meant must have been almost vertical as you encountered more and more information and talked to more and more people.
I would say it was hell. It was really tough.
But it sounds like it's fascinating. Why was it so hard?
Because first of all you have to find those artifacts, then you have to talk with the owners, with the museums, you have to build up trust level, you have to show that you are really serious, that you are able to do such an exhibition, and that's thanks of my experience in culture exhibitions. I could prove that I was handling like original paintings of Rubens, millions of dollars worth, so I could prove that I can handle very valuable artifacts, and finally we could really get 470, and I did not expect that.
Hi, I'm Carrie Cassidy from Project Camelot, and we're here with Bill Ryan and also Klaus Dauna. And Klaus is a maverick archaeologist investigating the mysterious past that the powers that be don't want you to know about of humanity. And we are very happy to be here today in Vienna. And Klaus, tell us something about your beginnings and how you got into this amazing
all those artifacts. We had some scientists helping us, checking if those artifacts are original, and we never found they never found out that there is some new made artifact with it. So I changed from skeptic to really big surprised, and it was like once you go into this world and you find out that there are so many so interesting artifacts all over the world, you want to know more and more and more. And since those years, I'm still researching, I'm still traveling, and the money I earn with my culture exhibitions, I spend for the research and for the